You work, you show up. You are not lazy, and yet at the end of every month you are standing in exactly the same place you were last month. Not collapsing, not thriving, just there. And here is the part that actually hurts. It is not the number in your account. It is the feeling underneath it. That specific private dread, the one that arrives at 11 at night when you open your banking app. The one where you realize that despite everything you did this month, every sacrifice, every late night, everything you said no to, the number barely moved. Most people call that bad luck. Some call it the economy. A few honest ones call it failure. None of those names are correct. What you are experiencing is not random. It is not personal. It is structural. You are trapped inside a specific level of financial pain, and until you correctly identify which level that is, nothing changes. Not the raise, not the side income, not the discipline. You will simply rotate inside the same trap with slightly different numbers. Machiavelli understood something about suffering that most people spend their lives avoiding. He said men are not destroyed by their enemies. They are destroyed by their own misdiagnosis. They fight the wrong battle on the wrong field and wonder why nothing ever moves. Nowhere is this more true than with money. This video is the map you were never given. Here is what the system did to you. From the moment you were old enough to earn, you were given one instruction. Repeated by your parents, your school, your culture. Always the same message in different words. Work harder. Earn more. Spend responsibly. And eventually the math will work out. That advice sounds reasonable. It feels responsible. It is also completely incomplete. Because it describes income, it never describes position. And in the world of wealth, position is everything. Income is just noise. Machiavelli wrote that fortune behaves like a river. When it floods, men have no time to prepare. But the man who studied the terrain before the flood, who mapped the land when the water was low, that man survives. Everyone else is swept away. Not because they were weaker, because they never studied where they were standing. You were never taught to study where you were standing. Pain without diagnosis is not progress. It is just pain. A man who confuses exhaustion with strategy will be exhausted for the rest of his life and never understand why he never arrived anywhere. That is the invisible architecture keeping you in place, not your income, not your ambition, your inability to name your level. In 1863, a young man named Andrew Carnegie was working as a superintendent for the Pennsylvania Railroad. He was 27. No empire, no steel mills. Nothing but a ledger book and one habit that separated him from every ambitious man around him. Before Carnegie ever negotiated a major deal, before he built a single factory, he sat down with his finances and asked one brutally honest question. Which kind of poor am I? Not poor as in broke. He was past that, but poor in a deeper way. He mapped it precisely. Is this poverty of capital, income, but no assets working for me? Is this poverty of positioning, in the right industry but the wrong seat inside it? Is this poverty of access, money but no connection to where real wealth actually moves? That one question, answered without ego, changed everything. In that same year, Carnegie made his first investment, $500 into the Adams Express Company. He had saved that $500 not by earning more, but by identifying exactly where his money had been leaking and closing those leaks with surgical precision. He diagnosed before he prescribed. Carnegie once said a man who knows exactly where he stands can move forward with certainty. A man who does not know where he stands is simply moving. There are 4 levels. And the first one is where most people never admit they still are. This is where most people begin. And for a significant number, it is also where they stay. Every dollar that comes in goes out. Not because you are reckless, but because spending feels like participation. Like proof that you are alive inside the life you were promised existed. Think about how this was built inside you. The ads, the shows, the people around you whose approval you needed. All of them were teaching you the same lesson, quietly, for years. Spending is identity. The new phone is not just a phone. It is a signal. The new clothes are not just clothes. They are a statement. The restaurant, the trip, the experience, these feel like necessities because they are doing something specific inside your psychology. They are providing evidence that you are okay, that you are not behind. Machiavelli would call this pain for the feeling of winning instead of the reality of it. The mechanism keeping money flowing outward is not greed, it is identity. You were taught at a very deep level that consumption is the proof of progress, and until you disconnect your sense of self from your spending, this trap holds. Here is what it looks like in real life. The man stuck here often earns a decent amount, but the balance returns to near zero every month. Full closet, busy calendar, empty account, and a quiet dread he does not discuss with anyone, because discussing it would require admitting what it means. He tells himself, next month will be different. It is not different. The cycle continues. Machiavelli wrote that men who rely on fortune alone, who spend today expecting more tomorrow, are the first to be destroyed when fortune shifts, because they built nothing. They only consumed. The moment you stop spending to prove you are okay and start building to become okay, that is the moment this trap loses its grip. Most people never make that shift. They earn more. They spend more. The cycle simply scales. And if some part of you recognized yourself here, hold that recognition. Because what comes next is what happens when this pattern gets access to more money without changing anything underneath. This is where the first trap goes when income increases, but the framework does not. At this stage, you are no longer spending your own money. You are spending money that does not belong to you yet. Credit cards, personal loans, buy now, pay later, overdrafts. These are not tools. They are a mechanism, and the interest you pay every month is not a fee. It is rent. Rent you pay to stay comfortable inside a structure that is quietly consuming you from underneath. Machiavelli warned about the danger of borrowed strength. He wrote that a man who builds his power on the resources of others builds on sand. What is borrowed must always be returned, always at a cost, and while the debt remains, the borrower never fully controls his own decisions. Read that again. Never fully controls his own decisions. This is what debt does that most people never name. It is not just a financial problem. It is a decision problem. It removes your options one by one, quietly, until the only decisions left are the ones forced on you by external pressure. Your money is spoken for before you earn it. The paycheck arrives, immediately disperses. Credit card minimum here, loan payment there, interest charge here. What remains is what you actually live on. And what remains is never quite enough. So the card gets used again, the spiral completes another rotation. Here is the brutal truth most people spend years avoiding. You are not in debt because you spent too much. You are in debt because income and identity became disconnected, and the gap was filled with credit. The debt is not the problem. It is the symptom. Treating symptoms without identifying the cause is precisely the kind of misdiagnosis Machiavelli warned about. The tell here is urgency. Every financial decision made from pressure rather than strategy. And urgency is always exploited by lenders who design minimum payment structures to keep you paying forever. By employers who know you cannot afford to walk away. By advertisers who understand that a pressured man buys for relief rather than value. Your debt is not just costing you money, it is costing you power every month, quietly. The man who names his debt as a power problem, not a math problem, not a discipline problem, a power problem, and responds with strategy instead of shame, that man escapes. Everyone else makes minimum payments and calls it responsibility. Because once you begin to see this clearly, something uncomfortable starts to form. Because what comes after this, from the outside, looks like safety. And safety might be the most dangerous thing on this entire map. This next trap is the most dangerous of all four. Not because it hurts the most. It does not. It is the most dangerous because it feels like safety. The bleeding has stopped. Debt is manageable, maybe cleared. You are not spending beyond your means. You have built some discipline, some consistency. Every month something small remains. By most visible measures, you are doing okay. but nothing moves. Your balance grows slowly, if at all. Your income is stable but flat. Your situation this year looks nearly identical to 2 years ago. No collapse, no crisis, but also no momentum. And momentum, as Machiavelli understood, is not a luxury, it is a requirement. Because a man who stops climbing does not stay in place. He descends. Slowly at first, then faster than he realizes. Here is what this trap actually is. Stability mistaken for progress. You remove the pain of what came before. The absence of pain feels like growth. But absence of pain is not movement. It is simply the absence of a specific pressure. The clock is still running. Inflation is still moving. Everyone who is building something is creating distance between themselves and you, silently, every single day, while you stand still and call it peace. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who does not advance loses ground. Stillness in a moving world is not neutrality. It is retreat in slow motion. Your money is safe, but it is not working. You know you should invest, but you are not sure where. You know you should build something, but the stability you have feels too fragile to risk. So you preserve instead of build. You protect instead of grow. And year after year, inflation erodes the very stability you sacrifice to create. Think of a man sitting in a boat on a river. No paddling, no engine. He thinks he is resting. He does not realize the current is moving beneath him. By the time he notices he has drifted, he is far from where he intended to go, drifting and calling it stillness. Getting out of this requires a specific kind of dissatisfaction most people have been trained to suppress their entire lives. The ability to look at something safe, not painful, and say clearly, this is not enough. This must change. Now. Most people cannot do this. The comfort is too real. They stay. But for those who look at the flat line and read it not as peace but as danger, something becomes visible on the other side. The most interesting trap of all, because it is the only one that does not look like a trap from the outside. This last trap is the one nobody warned you about, because from the outside, it looks like success. You are close. Your income is more than enough to survive. You have assets, or at least the beginning of them. You move in spaces where wealthy people exist. You have access to opportunities that most people never even see. By every external measure, you have arrived. And yet something is still wrong. You feel it even when you cannot name it. Here is what it looks like in real life. A man here gets a real opportunity. A client willing to pay serious money. A partnership with actual upside. An investment that makes strategic sense. And in the moment of decision, something happens that he cannot explain. He undercharges. He over-explains. He adds conditions that make the deal safer but smaller. He finds reasons to wait. Not because the opportunity is bad, because somewhere beneath his current income, beneath his current environment, there is a framework running. A mental operating system built during years of scarcity, and that system is still making decisions. Even now, even here, he changed his environment. He did not change his framework. And the framework is what actually runs financial decisions, not the balance in the account, not the room he is sitting in. Machiavelli wrote that a man who changes his position without changing his nature will always recreate his old position in his new location. He was describing rulers who rose to power and immediately replicated the failures of the men they replaced. But he was also, with brutal accuracy, describing every man who reaches this point and unconsciously sabotages the very opportunities he spent years working toward. It is a survival framework applied to a situation that demands completely different decisions. Survival thinking in scarcity keeps you alive. Survival thinking in abundance destroys you. Slowly, invisibly, in ways you will blame on bad timing. The tell is specific. When you earn more, you feel more pressure, not more freedom. When success arrives, it feels temporary. When someone offers you real money, your first instinct is to find reasons it will not work. Machiavelli wrote that the greatest obstacle a man faces after gaining power is not his enemies, it is his own prior habits. The instincts built for survival become the barriers to dominance. And most men never make the transition, not because they lack resources, but because they never identify the mechanism holding them in place. Getting out demands something almost no one is taught and very few people ever develop. The ability to act from strategic confidence before you feel confident, to make decisions from the person you are becoming, not the person who survived. To deliberately retire a version of yourself that kept you alive for years, because that version is now the thing standing between you and what you actually came here to build. Most men here never escape it, not because they lack ability, because they never realized they were still inside a trap. Now you have the map. 4 levels. 4 completely different mechanisms. 4 traps, each one invisible until named. But here is what most people miss about a map. It does not move you. It only shows you where you are. Movement requires the honest answer to one question. Which one am I actually in? Not the level you tell people. Not the version you present, the real one. Defined by your actual freedom, your actual control. The decisions you make when real money is involved. Carnegie did not build an empire because he earned more. He built it because in 1863 he looked at himself with surgical honesty and named his exact position, without ego, without excuses, without the comfortable stories men tell themselves to avoid what is true. And from that honest position, he moved with precision. That is what this map gives you. Not hope, not motivation, position. And the man who knows his position, who can look clearly and name exactly which cage he is standing in, that man is no longer fully inside it, because awareness is always the first movement. You cannot climb out of a trap you refuse to see. Machiavelli said the fatal mistake is never weakness. It is the misreading of your own situation. Men fall not because the world defeats them. They fall because they assessed themselves incorrectly and made decisions based on a fiction. You now have something most people around you will never have. You can name your trap, but there is something this map does not show. Machiavelli had a second doctrine, kept entirely out of the popular readings of his work, about the specific mechanism through which a man actually moves between these levels, not gradually, not by working harder, through one precise strategic shift that operates identically regardless of where you are currently standing. Most people will watch this, feel the accuracy of it for a moment, and return to exactly what they were doing. That is not a failure of intelligence. It is a failure of decision. A few will carry this map, will use it as a lens on every financial choice they face, will start seeing the mechanism of their trap operating in real time. For those few, this moment right now is not the end of something. It is the beginning. Decide which one you are.